Welcome to Just a Quick Convo. Today we are joined by Dane Facey. Dane, thanks for joining us.
You all right?
We are also at Cardiff City's new-ish academy training ground in Llanrumney in Cardiff. Dane, you are currently academy head of coaching at Cardiff City,
Yeah.
but you've been a big part of my personal development since I was about 8, and also you've been a big part of my footballing development as well. Could you just touch on how your roles have changed since you started in the academy, and what your role is now specifically?
Yeah, of course. Firstly, thanks for having me on. I think what you're doing is great. I mean, yeah, if I start before the academy, actually, I was playing football, but I started coaching when I was 15, and that's quite, I guess, unusual for most people to want to do that so young. But I was still playing, and my brother was in a football team, and my dad was helping out, and I was helping out as well. And I guess what I learned there was I really like working with young people, that sort of captured me. Did my A-levels, came out of school and thought, okay, I had an opportunity to go to university. I was accepted to go to Swansea University, and whilst I was playing for like a local football club, Cambrian as they are now, quite successful in the Welsh sort of system. One of the chaps there asked me would I do some coaching in the school for him, and I'd started doing it and I absolutely loved it. Coaching in primary schools, I was in secondary schools, and I was in a special needs school, just doing all different things but mostly football. And it really captured me really, and that's what got me, I guess, the bug of coaching. Often in football people say it's about who you know, and I think I sort of benefited in some ways in that regard, because my family knew Scott Young, I knew Gary Wilmot, and I had some connections there who were all involved at Cardiff at the time, and managed to start just doing a bit of casual coaching in like the development centres, and then eventually got asked to work in the academy, and I loved it. I started working with the younger ones, and you were one of them. I actually took a U-turn, and again, it's who you know. So my head teacher in my school got a job at Swansea City as academy manager, and yeah, he asked me you may well have been playing, but I remember I was at Treforest. It was the last game of the season, and we were playing Swansea, and he approached me at the end of the game and just said, "I've got a job coming up. Would you be interested?" And I took the plunge for a short time, for 12 months, and I went and worked down there. But again, I realised working at the top end, even though it's not elite in my view, young players are not elite, but working with some of the best talents, I really enjoyed. And then got the opportunity to come back to Cardiff in 2014, I think it was, as the lead youth development coach. So then I was looking after some of the older guys, the 12 to 16s, of which you soon became part of.
That seems very young to
yeah, I know. Yeah, and I spent 7 years doing that. Worked with some great people, obviously lots of them who influenced me a lot. And then more recently transitioned into the role of head of coaching, which now requires me to be a bit more strategic in maybe how our curriculum, how our player development strategy and our coach development strategy, how they all align to try and produce the best footballers we can and the best people that we can. Our academy manager shares, or his mission, if you like, for the academy is for everyone to achieve their own version of success. And I think that's quite like a nice way to look at it, is not everyone's going to play for Cardiff City or maybe even be a professional footballer, but the academy environment, if it's done well, could give them a lot of life enriching experiences that will help them achieve other things in life. So I think that's sort of the thing that I always go back to, is like, how are we making this young player, young child in some ways, how are we making this a great experience for them to use in the future? And I guess that's what I love about what I do. More recently, the influx of young players that have gone through into the first team, it's the things that we've always dreamed of, really. And to see you do it and now see others do it as well, having seen them at a very young age come through, I think that probably just adds a little bit more value to where you think you might have contributed, however small.
You mentioned you got into coaching at quite a young age for most people. Most people finish their careers and then decide, or 15 is a young age to think about, I want to go into coaching. What were your expectations of being a coach specifically before you started, and how does that compare to the reality and what you actually experienced or what you have experienced until now?
Yeah, I think my initial thoughts were, when I started coaching, was that football was the thing that people did to, you know, get away from certain things, to enjoy, you know, something that that made people happy. And I'll go back to where I started. I remember going into like a special needs school and doing some football there, and some of those children, like, that was the best hour of their week, you know, to be able to go and even just throw a ball, kick a ball, but to spend time with each other, part of a team, and do things together. It used to really sort of fulfill me with, okay, like, football has the power to make people feel good about themselves.
It's more than a game or something you do on
Absolutely.
Saturday.
And I'll never forget those lessons. And if I was being honest, I'd probably do more going and doing those things about coaching and about connecting with people, as opposed to actually the football. Like, for me, a coach is not just somebody that teaches you about the game. They teach you how to be a good team player, how to interact with people, how to be competitive, how to be humble and resilient in those moments as well. I think a good coach actually is able to tap into all of those things, and that's probably the things that I never take for granted. And what I guess being at Cardiff has allowed me to do is work with good people as well. And there are so many people that I've worked with, all very different, but all with different niches about how they do things, how they would coach, how they would connect, how they'd interact. And I guess, you know, all coaches, we're all the best thieves in the world, and we just steal those bits, those little nuggets of things that we see people do. And I think my growth as a coach has been able to tap into all the resources that I've had and the people I've been able to spend time with. And then also the players. Is like, you learn different things from different players. Some players need pushing, some players need an arm around, some players need a bit of support, whether that's even like, you know, confidence or psychological support in some ways. And even though I'm not a psychologist, you know when someone needs someone to talk to.
So you've seen all the scenarios, haven't you? You've seen it over however many years you've been doing it. Like,
exactly.
You've seen every player, every scenario.
Yeah, and with the variety of people that we have, the diverse nature of our environment, I guess, like, that's been like something that, again, you learn from, and you make mistakes as well. So like, I guess the good bit of the academy is it's a place of learning, but it's a place of learning for us as well. And I've always tried to reflect on things I think I did well, but also the things that, okay, I wouldn't do that again, or I wouldn't have that conversation again because that maybe wasn't intended the way it went. So yeah, you have to be humble enough to go, I maybe got that one wrong. And that also goes with the decision making processes. Like, we've got young players who are no longer at the academy, but the connections that worked are the ones that want to come back. And I think, like, what I've been able to experience more recently is we've got lots of young people who've been in the academy coming back to do stuff in the academy, whether it's this or whether it's coaching, or, you know, just come in. And there was a young lad here that you will have remembered and played with, just turned up to watch some of our games last week, and I was like, wow. And he's been out in Saudi, but the fact he felt comfortable enough to come back, I think that really sort of resonates with me, that the connections are what's important, and making people feel good about themselves and valued. I think that's the biggest bit I take from coaching, of what I've learned, is making connections with young people is the most important part, really.
Like, you've touched on it there about your impact being more than just being a coach, but I think, like, a coach in particular, especially at youth level, of course you have quite a big impact on us footballing wise. You know, our understanding of the game develops mainly from you guys from the ages of 8. Our pathway is created by you guys. Like, our pathway isn't there unless you create it for us, if you know what I mean. But I think inevitably you end up having quite a big impact on us as people, as we mature and grow and go through our teens. We spend like 4 or 5 days a week here every week from the ages of 8 to 16, and that's like a lot of time to be around adults and people that are looking after us and teaching us. How do you deal with that, like, responsibility of knowing that you do inevitably have some part to play over someone's personal development? And what sort of characteristics, you've touched on it a little bit, what sort of characteristics are you looking to build in players so that when they leave you, they're better prepared for their future, whether that's in football or out?
Yeah, it's an amazing question. I guess from my
Can I say?
perspective, there's loads of things.
Yeah.
There are loads of things that go into player development as I see it, and they're not all the coaching aspects. There's so many other things you have to consider. If I was to be humble, I would say it requires us as a team of people to recognise that we don't all contribute the same way. We need everybody to be pulling in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes comes with one, knowing what the player or the young person needs or maybe is going through, and trying to be more aware of like what the players are going, you know, what their circumstances are, whether that's in school, at home, when they're in our own environment, the types of characteristics they have, how competitive they are. You know, all of those things I think play a part in how we think we might be able to influence and grow. But the reality is it's not down to any one person as I see it. I mentioned it before, but I think the connection you built is the fundamental part. If you build a connection where the player feels trusting of a coach or a physio or a sports scientist, because we all have a role to play. I think if you can build that connection initially, then you have the opportunity to influence in a positive way potentially.
Do they trust you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that trust goes a long way.
Yeah.
Off the back of that, then you've got to be able to influence in the right way, but without actually making the decisions for people. Because I think back to, because you're sat there, I think back to some of the things that we did with you, and I think, oh yeah, that was great. Like I remember you might not remember this, we showed some videos around like elite mentality, and I remember there was one of Carolina Kluft, I think, who was a famous athlete, and she talked about you have to gain an edge. Like everyone else is working as hard as you are, so what are you going to do to gain that extra margin? But I remember that sitting quite strongly with someone like you, because then all of a sudden Eli wants to do extra sessions and he wants to come in and do more. My job is to be able to enhance that, facilitate it, but also make sure it's you wanting to do it, not me.
Comes off our own back.
And then there were other players that had been sat in that room watching that video who maybe it wouldn't have sort of resonated as strongly with, because of their personality or their characteristics. And it didn't mean that meant you would progress quicker than them. It just meant you wanted certain things that they didn't. And I think our ability as coaches sometimes is to find the fuse, like what ignites you, and then fuel it, then make sure that we provide enough things to make sure that we keep that fuse alight. And if that's, I really want to be a professional footballer, then we've got a really, you know, a responsibility, I believe, to try and keep that fuse burning. But for other people, they may not want it as much, but we've got to be able to find and fuel the things that they do want to do. And I always believe that, developing the person is, you know, it gets branded a lot. Like if you sit on most podcasts, it'd be like, oh, you know, develop the person. Fundamentally, most of the young people here want to be footballers. So we have to understand that football is what is predominantly the vehicle that they want to grow in. So the football matters, but it's the hidden tools that we can build: teamwork, resilience, challenge, support, care for someone else. You know, how we turn players who are maybe quite ego into sort of more team-based like thinkers. I think that's the subtleties of what I guess good coaches or good academy staff do. And like I said, we can get it wrong sometimes, but actually, from my perspective, the more connected we are in trying to grow the young person, I think the more success we're likely to have. A little bit different now, but I think obviously the parents as well. I think in the past, when I started, the parents were a bit of a hindrance as opposed to part of the journey, whereas now I think, because of the realities of what we know, is that we actually need to know a lot about what these kids do. I think actually the parents have a bigger role to play than what maybe I thought they did going back. So bringing the parents with the player on the journey, I think, is quite an important thing as well now, and something we're trying to be more mindful of.
I think from my perspective as a player, whenever I speak to players now, whether it's like past teammates, current teammates, boys in the squad now, and we like look back at some of the olden times in the academy or times we played together, wherever, you don't really remember like games or wins or particular instances football-wise? You remember like who made you laugh, when you were laughing, when you were getting a bollocking off somebody and how it was funny. You remember doing funny stuff in the academy, the kind of building. And I think even if I look at you or a coach in general, when I think of a coach, when I look back or even now, and I think this is same with a lot of players, I think you mainly remember how a coach made you feel. So from my perspective, you made me feel like you were always kid and that you were always going to go above and beyond to make sure that I was on the right path and that I was developing. Like I said, I can remember you coaching somewhat and you're a good coach and that's important. But what I mainly remember is you staying with me until 7 or 8 o'clock in the night, helping me catch up on a session that I might have missed earlier in the week, and you didn't have to do that because you've been at work all day. Or taking me on a walk for an hour when I was 17 and I had nothing to do with you at the time because I'd gone through injuries for best part of 2 years, and you talking me through, helping me see the light, helping me feel better about myself and make sure that, you know, I'm hearing someone say something to me and that they believe in me as well. I guess the point is, a coach obviously has a big part to play in tactics and development, but I think ultimately a coach can also have a big part to play in someone's life, and that transcends football and what happens on the training pitch, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, I think...
And that's more long lasting is my point, sorry. It's like, I'll always remember that. I won't always remember the games or the wins, but I'll always remember when someone says, Dane Facey, I'll always remember you taking me on a walk around the pitch and talking me through things and how that made me feel at the time.
Yeah, I think I remember that. And I think it's the same for coaches. Excuse me, like you more remember the experiences that you went through as opposed to the scores and the matches. And, you know, I wouldn't care to know how many academy football games I've seen or watched. I don't count them, but, you know, it would be a ridiculous amount. But I remember the players, I remember how they interacted, what made them tick. And I remember the extra bits in the evenings. Like I did a lot. I remember doing stuff with you. I remember doing it with some of the other boys that are in the first team now. But I always made sure that if you wanted it, I was there to do it. But I never forced it. I never organised it per se. I didn't really want it to be coming from me. I just wanted you guys to feel like if that was what was going to add value to you, then we would do it. And sometimes I can't even remember what the practices were. I don't remember like what I said to you and how we coached, but like I actually remember the experiences I went through. And I believe that was the connection building, that was the trust building, that was about, and you know, it wasn't BS. Like, you know, we believed in you, like, and we believe in a lot of players now, you know, and we still believe in you because you're still doing
believed.
Yeah, you know, yeah, but you know that comes from your willingness to learn, how hard-working you were because you were a really hard-working kid, how dedicated you were. I think sometimes we forget the sacrifice that young players go through to be in an academy. You mentioned it earlier, just like, you know, at under 16, you're probably here 12 hours a week, and that means you're not doing something else for 12 hours a week. And I think sometimes, you know, that's easily forgotten. But your dedication, like, you want to just enhance that and grow, and you want to, fundamentally as well, like, even though it's got you progressing, has got small bits to do with me, but and of everyone that's contributed to you. They're very small bits. The fact I've been able to contribute is what keeps me going as a coach, and it will do for the next, hopefully, 20 years if I'm coaching. You know, it's like it's the small bits that of influence that you think, okay, yeah, you know, he's progressing really well, and even for some of the boys that are not in football now, I still, you know, I take a lot of pride in that occasional text message here or there, or, you know, just keeping in touch with people that, you know, are not at Cardiff but are doing other things in their life. That sort of always gives me gratitude as well. I like to know that, you know, you've been able to influence people or at least build a positive relationship. But you're right, I think it is more than just the football. Although we're here to do the football, and the football's the bit at the end that everyone looks at, the debuts or the first team appearances, you know, that's what people judge it on. But I guess there's probably a lot more elements of success that you could maybe judge an academy on that don't get recognised. And I would probably say that, you know, making people feel good about themselves, making people love football, making people feel like they can progress and develop skills in an academy.
And that they cared about. I think that's such a big one as well. I wanted to say that because like it's not to be understated. Like making someone feel like they are cared about and that you cared about what actually happened in my life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's not to be understated, I don't think. And I wanted to say that anyway.
No, well, we want you to be successful, and you know, you're a bright boy as well. So like, I'm sure if you didn't go down the football route, you could have done whatever you would have wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think like, you know, that's always something you consider is like, these are really really top young people that are desperate to do well and be successful. And yeah, I think it's always making sure that. And you're allowed to go off the tracks, and obviously, unfortunately for you, you've had some injuries, and I think whether you know it now or you don't, but like that's probably meant you've had to be resilient. You've probably had to dig in and find the light sometimes in difficult moments. But the fact you've done that, I think, shows that you've got a lot about you, and I'm sure that whatever you decide to do beyond football, like, you'll be a success because of those experiences that you've had. Yeah. I think they'll always hold you in a really good stead moving forward. So
appreciate that. What are the main things that you remember about me when I was very young and then growing up as well?
So I said to you, I don't remember a lot of things, but I actually remember you walking onto the 3G, the first session at under 9. And I remember, and I remember you being a bit nervous.
Oh, I was very nervous.
I didn't want to put it to camera, but I even think there may have even been a few tears coming up,
Probably.
But I remember that. I remember you being a little bit anxious about, starting as an under 9, your first session. So I can remember it, and I remember Gaza being there, I think, Gary Wilmot, and Blocks, I think at the time, was doing the session with me. I remember as soon as the football got at your feet, nothing else mattered. And as soon as you got on the ball, like, nothing else mattered. Yeah. So my first, things I remember of you is, a little bit nervous, a little bit anxious. If I was to fast forward that to see what you were like at 15, probably the most driven, if not the, one of, if not the most driven kid. Desperate to learn, desperate to do well, confident, mature in your mind, in what you wanted. But if I was to say where you started and where you ended in when I was working with you more like on the pitch day to day, there was a huge transformation that happened there. Not because of me, I just think because of how you progressed. And I guess my interest to you would be like, what happened in that journey that made you feel more confident? Because my view at the end was, when you left the 16s program, which was sort of me passing you on, then we had a really good footballer, but we also had a really determined, hard-working, tough, sort of, confident young man that really wanted it, wanted it more than anyone in some ways. So what were the things that made you go from maybe this sort of unsure young person into this really confident young kid? That's what I remember about you.
Yeah. I always remember when I got the letter that came through, when you go from the development centre to the academy, or under 8s. And I actually remember looking at it on my worktop and thinking, oh, that's cool. I literally thought, that's cool, that's it. And in my head, obviously it's a cut-off then when you're under 9, you go into the academy. I thought, I won't make that. So I'll just enjoy these next few months of being in the prep squad and that. And that was always my attitude for the first year. I felt like I had no right to be there, but it wasn't as if I was necessarily nervous. I just didn't think I had any right to be there. I thought this will end soon. And then I think as I grew and I understood that, I probably started understanding around 11 or 12 that you get out what you put in, and that if I can find an extra edge on every single one in this squad, and the year above me and the year above that, I might end up being better than them at some point. And then when you see that come to fruition, so then when you're 11 and you're 12 and 13 and you can see that work that you put in come to fruition, it just compounds. And not only that, there's lots of videos about confidence, but I think you build confidence from almost building a portfolio of being who you say you are. doing the work and putting the work in and letting that come to fruition over a period of time. And in the end, you can't help but be quite confident and quite sure of yourself and quite certain of where you want to go. And I think that's the main thing that changed, is that when you, like I said, when you see that work come to fruition and you see what you're doing compared to other lads and how that's affecting your performance and affecting who you are as a person, I think that is only going to lead to one thing, and that's being confident and knowing exactly who you are, like I said.
Yeah, no, and you know, I think fundamentally that was down to the work you put in.
Yeah.
And I guess whilst we don't push too hard on players, like to do more than everyone, like we want that to be their choice, but I think it does pay off sometimes. In your case, I think you propelled yourself really nicely across, like particularly the 12 to 16 program. Then, you know, you asked me about like what I remember about you. One of the experiences I remember about you is going to Holland with you. I think we went to PSV and we played PSV in a couple of teams, and remembering you then become more of a leader as well on that camp. I say camp, but it was a tour. But again, I don't remember the games. I just remember you in the dressing room and sort of talking to the players. Yeah, and I do, and I remember those things. And I remember you performing pretty well across it, and the team did quite well. But like, those are the things I can remember. But like I said, it's not necessarily all the performances you gave, it's more how you were. And I remember that standing out to me, where you found a voice and you became a bit more confident and a bit more of a leader in the group. And then I think naturally you propelled yourself then, particularly through those latter years in that youth development phase, like 14s, 15s, 16s, where you became like a strong-minded leader, someone that people looked up to. And you led with performance as much as your voice, and I think like you really found a niche and an edge for you. So yeah, I do remember those things, and now obviously I look at you now, and I remember you being an intelligent kid. Like, I remember that you weren't just football; you were football driven, but you had the ability to think, you had the ability to reflect, maybe even overanalyze. That was maybe, I know something that happened later down the line is like overanalyzing your performance a little bit, maybe not being able to be free enough. There was something that I learned from with you that I've applied in other aspects as well, is like you quite liked being, and you were quite central to being like a sitting midfield player at the time. And I remember, because I watched your interview with Owen, I remember Owen was obviously a similar player. I remember we started using GPS. It was the first time GPS came out, and we were looking at like your profile compared to Owen's, like, and Owen would know this, by the way, but when you both played as the lower midfielder, you weren't being exposed to as much physical load of like high speed running. And I learned from that about you. It was like, okay, we need to extend Eli, we need him to be able to run like an 8, and we need him to be able to play like a 6, and we need him to score goals like a 10. And it was probably what influences me now, is like our midfield players have a wider exposure to the game as opposed to just playing in one position, like just being a 6. And you know, yourself and Owen were like two players that I learned a lot about in that moment. Was actually we needed to give you more than just one string to your bow, and that's something we still apply now. And I used that as a measure in my mind about, okay, how much experience are they getting of other positions. But that was based on you and your profile, and trying to make sure we give you more than what just a sitting midfielder would get. But yeah, that you influenced things that you didn't even know you were influencing. But yeah, those things I do remember.
Going forward then, what would you deem a success in your coaching career going in the future?
It's hard.
It's a broad question.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, like I've loved coaching, and I've had some amazing experiences, and I've been all over the world now. You know, coaching with the football club. We went to Australia, and I got to coach out there. We went to South Korea on a tour. You were too old, but like, you know, I've taken kids to Asia to play football. We played some unbelievable
Coaching
teams
with Wales as well.
And recently been, you know, doing some stuff with some of the national squads, and love that as well, because again, you get to see the level of ability on the, you know, not just in our own environment but outside of that, and I love it. But I guess success to me would be to probably be more relevant now, because I've been able to see some young players like yourself and a couple more recently that were with us at 8, and now they're debuting in our first team. So you're looking at that maybe 10 to 12 year span of learning that they've gone through, and now they're making that step. I think probably now is where I can reflect more on, okay, what did the program look like for them at 8? What did we get right? What bits could we improve to make it? And I'm probably looking more around like strategically the plan for players from 8 to 21 and making sure they can make that last step. That's the bit that excites me now, is because we've seen players do it. What can we learn from all of the things that we did or didn't do, and mistakes we may have made as well along the way. So like I quite enjoy that, but success for me would be just to continue to see young players thrive, and hopefully playing in our first team, but if not, going and playing in other first teams. Some of the staff here do a great job in trying to capture the players that don't play in our first team as well.
But it's still a product of the academy.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think for me it'll always be based on the type of people that come out at the end, and we hopefully will have an influence on everyone, but certainly for the majority it's hopefully that they become more well-rounded individuals, better people, have a willingness to want to work hard and be resilient, and sort of really fight for what they want and what they believe in. If we can instill some of those things in young people, those sort of, we call them elite behaviours, but not saying it's elite, but those like standards and expectations, if we can instill that, then we will be on a positive path, I think, for youth development. But for me, it's just, I treat you guys, probably my first group, like I didn't have kids at the time, so you were my kids. Like, I wanted you guys to do well, and that doesn't change now that I have got kids. All the boys in this academy, I want them to do well, and if they're doing well, then that'll make me happy, and hopefully that everyone in the building can contribute in some way to make sure that happens for them. So yeah, it's more about making sure that everyone gets, as Gav said, their own version of success. If we can get that, then I'll be happy. I'll be pleased.
Dane, I absolutely love that.
Yeah,
absolutely
cheers,
love that.
Oh, great.
Thank you very much.
Top man.
Cheers. That was sick.